Well, to all the aficionados of the Variety Hour podcast, and we know you're out there because most of you are under surveillance of some kind, we have to say we have been a little bit tardy in the delivering of the podcast of late. In fact, some would say our reliability is up there with the list management at Gold Coast. But we have come back. We are here with a new podcast this week of the Variety Hour. I'm Sergio Paradise, and I'm joined, as always, by a bloke who's about to run out the front door and try and get a hug from Prince Harry. It's Titus O'Reilly.
Oh, thank you. We have been a bit off, but footy season ended.
Yeah, exactly.
We did one after that, and then we both had a bit of a break because we did need it.
Yeah, we had.
It wasn't really a scheduled
break. Fly-in, fly-out gig to Saudi Arabia.
And then what else have we been doing?
Tie up a few loose ends.
Yeah, you've been doing that. I'd like to think you've been sitting somewhere with a bucket of Coronas. Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, it's not far from the truth, actually, I've got to say. Well, it's not quite as much fun doing it in your own home rather than under a palm tree somewhere, but still, bucket of Coronas is still a bucket of Coronas.
I've been watching the cricketers fail overseas at the moment. They did all right with the draw the first time, but this one, surprisingly, the Marsh brothers not firing.
Suddenly, there was so much, they got out of jail so well in that first test.
Yeah.
It was, they treated it like a victory, but it didn't take them long to get back to their real form.
I'm loving how, after the Steve Smith and David Warner stuff, the current team are getting all these good, positive messages about, their sportsmanship and behaving well. And it's like, the bar's been set so low, if they just behave like normal people, everyone says, gee, you're doing a great job.
I saw you mention that, and I thought, yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It was like, and I think in the last podcast we mentioned it very quickly, is that they all got massive pats on the back and plaudits for shaking hands before the game. It's like, oh, really? Is that big a deal now, is it?
Well, the bar had been lowered pretty low.
Yeah, but I didn't realise it was that low that, as you say, that they act like decent human beings, or at least, you can be a super competitive elite sports person
and not a horrible man
and not be, a rotten, stinking, as well at the same time.
Well, I'd like to challenge you on that generally, which is not intentionally, but sort of a nice segue into my answer, which is that my new book is almost out, which is going to be out October 29th. It's called A Sporting Chance, and it's all about sports scandals and how we always forgive in Australia our sporting heroes, no matter what horrible stuff they do.
I haven't read the book yet, but would I be right in assuming that there's a bit to do with the good bloke syndrome?
There is. It's all about... So when I started writing this, it's funny writing a book because I had an idea for a book which wasn't anything too sophisticated. I was thinking, and I ran it past a few people, and I ran it past my editor, and who did my first book, and she's really good, and she said, "This is a terrible idea. This is the other idea I had." So then I went back, and you and I talked about this for a long. I've done a lot of it in my writing before, which is about how the good bloke clause and how it is amazing that if you do something in a sporting sense, you can get away with stuff that if your normal workplace, you would not get away with it at all.
Oh.
So I sat down and started looking through it all, and
But with the three letters NRL, do they pop up at any stage?
Well, it's amazing. There's not many sports that are untouched.
No, there wouldn't be. Actually.
So my whole thing is, I guess the book's about: do we forgive them as much as people think we do? Or is it that the media often forgive them? So Carey's a good example of that, where he's sort of let back in by Channel 7 and The Age. He writes a column for them. But I don't know how much that, when I meet general footy fans, and it's come up as, I've never heard anyone say that they have forgiven him or think he's a great guy, but they often say the complete opposite. The other thing is, like, the good bloke for so long was unchallenged, and I raised the issue of, are they endangered? Because we've got
the good bloke in danger.
Yeah, because we've got integrity units, we've got social media and everyone having a camera phone.
Yeah.
We've got political correctness, as it's called. We've got the change in social values. So being a good bloke is not as easy as it once was. You can't get away with it.
It's not the complete get out of jail card that it once was.
Yeah, and it's also just things like, I've got a whole bits on family violence that used to be not a concern of sporting bodies.
Yeah,
because the police dealt with it, but even the police turned a blind eye on a lot of it. Now suddenly the NRL's got 5 blokes in there currently playing that have either pleaded guilty or gone to jail for or been sentenced for family violence. So that's an issue. So there's all these different things. And so I also just go into all the craziness of the scandals, like the breadth of things that have been done that you couldn't imagine. Why would they ever be done? Like the stories are amazing, some of them.
Yeah. I mean, the scandals and the peccadillos and the terrible behaviour of sports people.
Yeah.
I mean, across the there'd be hundreds of examples.
Well, one of the ones I dug up, which I'd forgotten about. So I go in a bit about how we all even forgive business people if they've been involved in sports. So you compare Alan Bond, who won the America's Cup.
President of Richmond.
He was president of Richmond briefly, where he he was president in the off season before they found out he wanted to move him to Brisbane and float him on the stock exchange. So they kicked him out, and he said at the AGM for Richmond when he just became president, he said he'd been a lifelong fan of the red and the black. Seriously, in front of all the members.
That would have endeared him.
And then he got Dale Waitman's name wrong. So
they're pretty forgiving mob, the Tiger
Army.
Well,
they booted him out. But what's interesting is when Bond died, and I go into this in the book in a bit of detail, like all these people came out and said, "Oh, such a mixed legacy," because he'd won the America's Cup, but he'd also stripped Bell Resources illegally of $1.3 billion in the largest corporate fraud in the history of Australia. So when you consider, like, people are basically saying the winning a boat race offset $1.3 billion. So that kind of shows the power in Australia of sport to change it. When Skase died, now Skase had owned the Brisbane Bears. Yeah. But because they were so hopeless and he didn't have the equivalent sporting thing, when he died, everyone was like, he's a scumbag.
Yeah, exactly.
There was no mixed legacy.
Sitting there at Mallorca with his oxygen mask on there, he didn't get a lot of sympathy, did he?
So one of the interesting stories, though, that gives you an idea of how much we'll go to forgive a sports person or someone involved in sports and how forgiving sports as a community are, is Jeffrey Edelsten, in 2013 was made a life member of Carlton. Yes. And remember, he was in the box with Malthouse on his, was it 700th game or coached or whatever it was? Now, Jeffrey Edelsten went to jail. Do you remember why he went to jail?
Was it for hiring the services of a hitman?
Well, he solicited. So he didn't actually hire him. But Christopher Dale Flannery from Blue Murder fame, Mr. Rent-A-Kill, who is, I think, up to 14 murders he was on the books believed to have done before he disappeared himself, believed to be killed by corrupt police, seemed to be the belief that was Mr. the coroner. Might know where those the coroner said Roger Rogerson might know. Yeah. Edelsten tried to hire, asked about hiring. He spoke to Flannery directly and said, how much would it cost? What's the details of you beating up one of my patients? Yeah. He also was found to act with corrupt cops to give Flannery a medical certificate to get him off seeing a certain judge on a certain day to hear a crime because the judge was known as being quite harsh and the corrupt cops didn't want him to go up in front. So Edelsten organised a medical procedure for that day to get him out of it. And he went to jail for both for a year. So Edelsten makes the thing that he did not hire a hitman, he just solicited a hitman, which is ask you about it. And so I go through that story, and when I'm reading that, I'm just thinking, how did Carlton let this guy back in? But even before all that, he was president of the Swans. Exactly. I go into that too. Yeah. So it's kind of, even then the rumours around the hitman were around when that happened. But
that's where he must have.
So there's crazy stories. So anyway, I didn't mean to go into all of it, but that book's that's out October 29th. It's called Sporting Chance. I've got it up on my website for the pre-orders, and you can also get it from. It's going to be in all the bookstores, all Big W,
just in time for
Target,
Christmas.
Just in time for Christmas. And it's I've got it on my website where you can pre-order it now, and I'll sign it and send it out. And also got a package with my first book, so you can actually chuck in for $15 get the first book too. So go to my website if you want to
start your own O'Reilly library.
Yes, that's right. But I'm really happy with the book, so I'm excited for people to sort of get a look at it. So we should talk about, because we haven't spoken for a while, there's a few things to cover off, but why don't we start with trade period?
Well, it's actually probably good that we're doing it today and not a couple of days ago, because now we know it's over now until the draft, which is about 5 weeks away.
What did you think of the Harry and Meghan making their baby announcement in the middle of trade period?
Oh, they just hadn't thought that through.
Talk about trampling the local traditions and showing no respect.
They've buried the lead. Dane Beams out of Brisbane,
I mean, you can't do that, can you?
No. I mean, to me, it showed complete contempt for the Australian public and the country, our country in general. This is the sort of colonialism and arrogance of the British that we've resented for the last 200 and something years.
It's one of our holiest times of the year.
Yeah.
And there we are having to...
They shouldn't even be in town during trade week, let alone be dropping lines like that.
They're pregnant. Terrible. And I think it distracted a lot of people working on trade week, which is why everything got done at the last minute.
I am disappointed we haven't heard from her, terrific half-sister about what she thought of trade week too, because,
From Pippa?
No, the other one. Megan's...
Crazy family,
Yeah. What do they think about Jesse Hogan going to Fremantle?
We need to get the... If you pay them, they'd probably come and do an interview. So let's go through the trades quickly.
Okay.
Apparently, everyone, the way it works, everyone puts their keys in a bowl, a bit like a party at your house.
Yeah.
And then
Well, see, when we do that, we all wear club polo shirts as well.
So... This is in no particular order of importance or even chronological order. So Ryan Burton got traded to Port Adelaide as part of the Chad Wingard deal. So Chad's gone to Hawthorn.
Yeah.
And Adelaide got Ryan Burton. They got a future third-round pick. Wingard and a third-round pick went to Hawthorn. Port Adelaide got pick 15, 35 and a future fourth-round pick plus Ryan Burton. So
if I'm a Hawthorn supporter, I'm not all that happy about seeing the back of Burton. I reckon he can play that kid.
Well, there seemed to be a bit of annoyance about it. Wingard, I've seen do amazing things. If he can play consistently, he'd be a superstar.
Oh, Wingard's a good player.
And how much of that has been just being at Port Adelaide, where the team as a whole is pretty inconsistent?
Yeah.
You get him under Clarkson and...
Well, that's right. Clarkson could take him to another level.
People need to remember too that Clarkson does know what he's doing.
Well, that's right.
Every time every off-season, everyone gets annoyed about what Clarkson does.
This is what surprised me a bit about Burton, because generally to get these deals done, to bring in a bloke as good as Wingard, you give him not one of your top A-grade players. And sure, Burton's not there yet, but I reckon by next year he just about could be. I reckon Burton is slightly too good a player to have been handballed in that trade.
But do you think it's more about what Clarkson thinks the team needs?
Oh, no question. I mean, they've proven that over the last few years. But and as you say, you shouldn't be sort of undercutting Clarkson's judgment or questioning it.
Well, we also know that they managed to land Scully from pretty much nothing. Although the reason that is
Tim Sims,
is his ankle's meant to be way worse than everyone first thought.
Well, it must be, because they reckon he's not even going to be fit for round 1 next year.
Right.
So it must be a hell of an ankle injury.
But I guess Hawthorn look at it and they got O'Meara's knee right, so they look at it and go, we can probably get this right.
Oh,
and if we don't, what they give up, it was like a
pick 71 or something 68
pointless.
Or something.
Yeah,
so he cost them nothing. And he's a good player, Scully.
The thing about this trade period, I think, and it seemed to take a few people in the media, not all, some got it, but not all, a while to understand that the salary cap now has changes to the salary cap now have a big impact on clubs having to move on players they don't want to move on, but because they just simply got to free up cap space.
It seems that for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but to a degree, that the salary cap is actually having an effect on everything. Whereas in in the past, you think, they're under the salary cap, they're this, they're that.
Yeah.
But now they've all found that we actually have to,
manage
stick to the
longer.
salary cap and manage it.
And if anyone...
the NRL should take a leaf out of that book bag.
But if anyone's followed American football or baseball, not so much baseball doesn't have the salary cap in the same way, but NBA especially, the amount of times players will get traded to dump salary.
Yeah.
So a team that does have a lot of room under the salary cap will take a player off another team's hand to help them out, but in response get a bunch of draft picks or get other things in response, like in return for taking that salary cap off their hands. So that we're going to see more of that as either teams are badly managed.
Well, the trading of future picks has only been around for a year or so.
That's right. So we're going to see this more and more where teams have to, move good players on because you simply, as Andrew Demetrio once said of Sydney, you can't have everyone. That obviously doesn't apply to Richmond.
No.
But, so that's kind of interesting that Scully's an example of both the ankle, but also there was a chance with GWS looking at it going, he's big on our salary and his ankle's not that great.
Might be a good time.
He might be the one to move on, right? And then we can try and keep some of the others.
Yeah. And because he was moved on precisely for that reason, not so much what can we get for him, because they got bugger all for him. So
that's right. That's they weren't in a position to. There was an element there with the Hogan thing too. Is Melbourne have actually freed up a lot of salary cap, even though May came on. I know, but May wasn't on what Hogan was on. So Hogan going has actually freed up for next season. Yeah, a fair bit of money for
and
Melbourne to do
for May and College Jasny
and other things. There'll probably be a bit more that they had, and if you're going to lose him anyway. One thing I found very interesting is because this deal got done so early, but people still seem to forget that Tom Lynch has gone to Richmond.
Yeah.
Now, everyone's claiming Essendon and others have won the trade period, but you're like, hang on, the Premiers the year before and almost, played in the prelim, they just got Tom Lynch.
But it seems like they got Tom Lynch in about July or August, before anything was signed or deals done.
It's too long, the trade period, though, surely, because they all do it. Most of it gets done at the last minute anyway.
It should be one day. Be like speed dating. Just all get in there. As you say, toss your keys in the bowl.
You'll make some mistakes, but it'll be better.
Just, spin the wheel.
Well, the last 3 hours of trade period are the interesting bit. And it's like giving someone an assignment and going, if it's in a week's time, they'll get it done a week. If it's in a month's time, they'll start a week out from the month anyway. Like, that's the way it works.
Exactly. Like going to uni, you start writing about 10 o'clock the night before.
That's right, regardless of when it was, how long you've had. So Tom Lynch to Richmond, I think that speaks for itself as a great move for them. They're pretty much there. Gold Coast, obviously.
Well, the good thing just on Richmond is that they got Tom Lynch, but without having to part with one of their A-listers. Yeah. They just got rid of, blokes who can play footy, but they weren't, in their best 20 or 22 probably.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was, they played it pretty well, the Tigers.
Gold Coast also lost Stephen May. So Stephen May, their captain, and Tom Lynch was their co-captain before he announced he was moving, as part of that big deal that saw Lachie Neale go to Brisbane, Jesse Hogan go to Freo, Stephen May basically come over to Melbourne.
Yep.
How are you going about Jesse Hogan leaving?
Well, I'm not overly happy to see the back of Jesse Hogan, purely because, he's kicked plenty of goals and he's a very, very good player. And I just don't like to see the back of very, very good players. Yeah. Now, I understand all the reasons for it. And it's good that we've got Stephen May and what have you.
Well, I think if you hadn't got May, it would have been pretty horrendous. But you could argue... The counter-argument is that I've heard people give is Hogan is, a very good talent, but his head hasn't been right. He's been wanting out of the club for ages. There's a belief that Melbourne actually functions better without him, that he runs to the wrong spots and isn't as good as, and often plays well against the bad teams, not the good teams. People were saying this before, so this isn't like, where the jilted fans all bag that, because I really like Hogan. But that was sort of the counter-argument, and that Melbourne's defence, you get May in, it frees Lever up to be more that floating player even more when he comes back, and through people like, Tom McDonald, etc. And if Wiedemann comes on, you've suddenly... The kicking goals is not Melbourne's problem.
I think they're putting a lot of faith in Wiedemann after one good final.
I agree with that too. I mean, I think Tom McDonald is a superstar.
Is a superstar.
And Melbourne showed they could kick a lot of goals. Kicking goals wasn't their problem, and if their defence can get even better, which it did towards the end of the year. So that's what I think. So that's the counter argument. I think realistically, this is the thing that we all, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. May want it out of the sun, so Melbourne were going to benefit from that probably.
Yeah.
But Hogan was always going to probably go. It's been bubbling along forever. The rumours have never gone away. And when the push came to shove, it showed he did. Melbourne then, when you're in that position, your bargaining power, people were bagging Melbourne like, you let him go too cheaply. But the thing is, what's your alternate? Hang on for him till he's a free agent, and then you can just go, or you're going to get like, this is where the best you're going to get for someone who's said they basically want to go. Yeah. So I thought Melbourne did as well as they could out of the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm more than happy to wait and see what happens. I just, as a general rule, I don't like to see A-list players go.
But if they've already decided to go...
Oh, yeah, no question.
The thing, too, that is more... The flip side of it all that's the most interesting is the Gold Coast Suns. You think about it, they've lost Lynch, they lost May, they lost Gary Ablett last year.
Yeah, lost so many players.
They've lost so many good players. And they really are now. I know they've got sort of, I think it's picks, what is it, 3?
2, 3 and 6.
Yeah, and so... But to me, they're going. It's like they're restocking the trout farm.
Yeah.
Because the Victorian clubs mainly have come and fished it all out. Now they've got to restock.
And you kind of know that in 2 or 3 years' time, those fingerlings will be 3-pounders.
Yeah,
and they'll be off to Collingwood.
They are literally a feeder team at the moment.
Yeah.
And GWS are not quite this bad, but are struggling too to retain players. This is the thing for me is the real thing is you've got to, for now, give the setting up of those 2 expansion teams. Like it shows how hard it is to set up new clubs. So I'm not totally bagging them. Like you'd have to say it's pretty close to a failure so far.
Yeah.
If you were having to mark them today, considering $100 million has been spent on each, and
at least, yeah.
So if you suddenly say $200 million back in the AFL coffers, what could they do with that in terms of junior development? So if you just kept Brisbane and the Lions and the Swans, didn't have those expansion, but put $200 million into the development of the game in those states.
Yeah, into Auskick programs. And
it's a lot of money to do this stuff. Now, when you also look at all the stuff they gave in terms of trade and draft concessions, how badly that they have gone is really like, I mean, if they were a government body, this would be an NBN type scandal, but sort of it doesn't seem people are going that hard on the AFL. Now, I know it was a different commission or that, but questions have to be asked when that sum of money and these are involved and they are going that badly. Like the Gold Coast Suns list next year is... they're back to their first year. It's going to... with you could see them losing every game next year.
2, 3 and 6.
Yeah, and as you know, they're going to go into a system that doesn't have any set up to really show
Carlton will probably take that Sam Walsh kid with number 1, the midfielder.
Yeah.
And then Gold Coast get 2 and 3. Now, do they take those 2 superstar South Australian kids who... Port Adelaide and Adelaide, they want them.
I've already said we're going to do everything
in a couple of years anyway. Do they take the big twins, the King twins, out of Melbourne in the same regard, knowing that in 2 or 3 years' time, if they develop nicely, your Collingwoods and Hawthorns and Richmond are going to come knocking.
But a lot of it comes down to, I mean, there's the go-home factor to an extent, but a lot of it comes down to as well success on the field. And a lot of the and I just think a lot of people just hadn't bought in, the players hadn't bought into, if I stay at the Gold Coast Suns, I'm going to have any success in life.
I think that's got a huge amount. The go-home thing, I reckon, is vastly overstated myself. I think it's more the lack of...
I always think of the flip side, which no one ever writes a story about, right, because no one complains about it. There must be players, regardless of whether they go from South Australia to Victoria or Victoria to Gold Coast or wherever, you hear about the ones that are homesick.
Yeah.
You never hear about the ones that go, it's so great being in a different state to my family.
I was just
there must be some that just go, this is living. I'm on the Gold Coast or I'm in Perth.
If somebody said, hey, you've got to move out of home. You're going to live on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And we're going to pay you
Be on good
3
coin.
times the average wage for an 18-year-old. You couldn't get me on the plane quick enough.
Your parents only be visit you a few times a year.
You'd have driven up there. You'd have hitchhiked up there,
You'd have already left. You'd be on your way.
Even if I wasn't drafted,
so
I'd have gone.
I think it is. I think a lot of these ones that say this is there is a factor sometimes that go home and all that because of family and, and sometimes someone might have a sick family member and all that sort of stuff. So I get there are things that complicate
There
things.
is a bit of that.
But there's a lot that come back because they just go, I don't really like it here. I mean, Lachie Neale, who went obviously to Brisbane, that the sort of quite well-known fact of that is he just didn't get along with Ross Lyon.
Yeah.
And that was sort of...
I mean, he's not a Queensland boy, is he, Lachie Neale?
Not to my knowledge. So,
no, I don't think
but
he
just...
and
the other one... The word was he just didn't get along with Ross Lyon, so he wanted out.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And the other go-home one, which I found vaguely amusing, was Luke Dalhouse wanted to get home from Footscray to Geelong.
I mean, I can see that's more convenient.
40 minutes away.
So Brisbane did well getting Lachie Neale, but then, of course, Dame Beams suddenly went out. Now, Dame Beams is a weird one because I think we all felt a bit of sympathy in leaving Collingwood because he's had family sickness and illness and so I think that was what I found weird is he came out a couple of weeks ago, I think it was at their Best and Fairest, and said, I'm fully committed, I love this club.
Yeah.
Why say that and then force the move home? I don't know. I don't know what the rationale was behind that, or whether he genuinely briefly thought and then he thought, I've made a huge mistake.
Maybe, you give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he got up there at the Best and Fairest night and, looked around and felt some little surge of emotion or something and just...
Yeah.
Spelled it out publicly, even though down the track he regretted some of it.
That trade's interesting because the Lions lose Beams. They had picked up Lachie Neale, obviously. Now,
what did the Lions get?
So the interesting thing about this for Beams, which is where I think is very interesting. So some people think Collingwood paid too much. I'll go through what Collingwood, but when you look at it from Collingwood's point of view, they couldn't be more in the premiership window.
No.
They only just lost the grand final this year, right? So adding Beams in there makes them the best, arguably the best midfield in the comp, right? So for them, it's worth going all in because now's their time. They want to sort of win one the next 2 years, and you'd argue that they're a chance for that. But they did give up round 1, which is pick 18. Round 3, which is pick 56, and then a future round 1 selection as well. So that might not be that lower one if Collingwood stay doing well, but if this year, the thing I don't know about Collingwood is I suspect Collingwood was Collingwood playing on sort of emotion and development and all this year, and and a lot of people believe they sort of achieved above themselves, or are they a genuinely good side and are going to do similar thing this next year? Now, you'd argue they probably will, but there is sort of that thing of they sort of
do have a lot being of good the surprise. Players.
They do. So, but it is interesting what they gave up for Brisbane. Losing Beams is going to be 29, I think, if he's not already.
Yeah.
I think for Brisbane, while annoying for next season, then they were going to win a premiership next season. So to get Lachie Neale in and then to get 2 round 1 picks and a round 3 is probably not the end of the world.
In 2 or 3 years, this could be...
Beams is probably going to go anyway.
This could end up being a terrific deal for Brisbane.
Yeah, so I think it's not the end of the world. Collingwood, it's like when you're that close to winning a premiership, I reckon it's worth having the swing. And even if you miss, you miss. But I reckon, people have been critical of them, but I'm like, winning a premiership is so hard. People forget. They sort of think of these dynasties.
You throw Beams into that midfield. I mean, and Collingwood, they get... And Jamie Elliott, who I'm a huge rap for as a footballer, they get him back in the forward line.
For a few games?
Yeah, for a few games until he gets injured or does something stupid. But you just can't write them off this year. You throw Beams in there as well.
The other one that was kind of interesting is, of course, Dylan Shield getting to Essendon in the end.
And people, aren't they talking up Essendon now because Dylan Shield's gone there?
Well, Essendon did end the season very well. The second half of the season, they were one of the better sides. It's just they had such a terrible start. They seemed to get better once Joe Danaher went out injured. Now, I'm not saying there's correlation isn't causation always, but that was kind of interesting. Now he'll be back, and they got Shield, so suddenly their midfield is looking quite good. Yeah, this idea that they're instantly
top
premiership,
material,
but this happened last year. Port Adelaide and Essendon won the pre-season trade or the trading period last year. Everyone was, and neither of them made finals. Yeah. So it's like West Coast didn't land anyone. But you'd argue they don't need to, and they're going to get Gaff back from suspension, and they won a premiership with him not on the field. So you kind of look at them, and Nick Nat too, possibly. So you look at them and go, well, they've got a chance to get better.
They're going to be just fine.
Winning the trade period is not always.
And you look at Port. They lost Wingard this year, but they did pick up Jack Trengove and Jack Watts last year. So.
It was a huge year last year. But anyway, I mean, Shield is a great pickup for us, and don't get me wrong, I think they'll probably play finals next year, but the idea that it's instantly a premiership is, who knows? No one picked Eagles and Collingwood to play off for the premiership this year either, so we don't really, none of us have a clue what we're talking about. Tim Kelly couldn't get out of Geelong, not the first person that's felt that. They tried hard. It seemed like West Coast were like, we're premiers, we can win premierships without him. We're not going to give everything up just to get him when he's probably going to come next year anyway. Yeah. So I thought West Coast actually put together, I think it was a couple of later round picks, but I thought it was a generous enough offer that they put forward if you were Geelong. Yeah. Geelong seemed to, think we'll use him next year and hopefully we can pressure him to stay.
I reckon Geelong, geez, do they make a big song and dance about the come home to Geelong thing? But
for Dangerfield.
Yeah, Dangerfield, Ablett.
Yeah. But when it works the other way.
There's a bit of
this within the state, though. The Victorian media, the minute any player wants to come back to Victoria, they act like it's a birthright.
Yeah.
But then if a player says, I want to go to the Eagles, it becomes, how ungrateful are they?
Yeah.
There's that double standard in...
If I want to go back to Adelaide, they just question it naturally,
The standard of living in Adelaide is high, so compared to Melbourne. So I don't know why. I can't understand why more people go there. Like, don't want to go there because it's like
cheaper housing.
It's everything. It's cheaper. The nightlife's fun. It's got lots of good stuff happening in Adelaide. Like it's like the reverse cola. You don't need cola. It's cheaper there. So your dollar goes further living there than it does.
You can get a drink after 8 o'clock.
Yeah, it's not Sydney.
Yeah, it's not Sydney.
Which is a benefit. So. Look, who knows what any of these trades all mean? Everyone's got their hot takes on how it all will work and fit together. I mean,
the big question is, how are they going to affect AFLX?
Do you think without Jesse Hogan, Melbourne got any chance of going back to back?
Lever won't be back, but Colin Dashney might add a bit of pace on the smaller rectangular field.
Much needed. So who knows? I mean, one thing I think is interesting is Freo no longer like Ross in his rebuild, assuming it all goes well, he can't really blame, like that's kind of the so-called missing piece that Freo have had for a long time. And so with the Lob and the Hogan arriving and stuff, they sort of don't have that excuse anymore, do they, of how things go. So who knows? Anyway, the key bit is that all the clubs won.
Everybody won.
Everyone won. It was amazing, and well done to Essendon again for winning the premiership.
And every player who got traded for a very low pick was exactly what we were looking for.
There wasn't. Yeah, we'll get to it's the time of year now where we move from being trade experts to draft experts.
Yeah.
So that's our next thing we'll do. They announced the new rules, so it might be worth just touching on them because we haven't talked about these before. Some of the ones that they had the traditional playing positions at centre bouncers is the AFL's word. So that's where the 6-6-6 rule. Yeah. So they've got to have 6 players inside both the 50-metre arc. One of the players inside the goal square. The other thing is 4 midfield players must start inside the centre square with the 2 wingmen stationed along the wing, funnily enough. That one to me is not that different in a way. They've spaced them out a bit more. I think it means a lot of clubs, and Melbourne did this a bit this year, where they swung a couple of players behind the ball to then run through from that way, and also then if it quickly got out of the centre, they had an extra defender, and some clubs do that a bit. So it does stop that. So there are a different there. Kick-ins. Now, kick-ins is where they were looking at the 18-metre goal square. They said
Thank Christ I didn't do that.
Well, it's interesting. I kind of think they went, all right, obviously reading the mood of the meeting and the fans and everything, they went, that's going to get us, you know, critiqued.
That's the one that people are going to get upset
about. They're going to be furious.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that. So what we are going to do is we're no longer a player kicking out. If you want to run out of the goal square, you don't have to kick it to yourself. You can just run out.
Yeah.
And they've pushed the man on the mark back to 10 metres from the top rather than 5. So in a way, they've extended the goal square. They just haven't changed the markings.
Yeah.
Because the lines don't mean what they used to mean. Where it used to mean you had to kick it to yourself, which took up time and you could stuff it up. So it was a more risky thing. And the man on the mat was only 5 metres off, so it could shut you down. Now you can run straight out after, and you can also got the man on the mark 5 metres back. So it essentially is doing a bit of what they wanted anyway.
Yeah. And with the man on the mark now being 10 metres away at least, that gives the fullback or whoever's kicking it out, you know, guys at that level, at AFL level, that gives you a hell of a lot of extra time and space to make a decision.
And the whole point of this is they wanted the ball to travel further so it goes to the wider part of the ground from kickoffs, because it's then harder for other teams to lock it in and defend it. But my problem is the bad teams are going to just turn it over as much as anything.
Yeah.
And then the ball will come back in very quickly and there'll be less people in the forward 50 because they've all moved back further. So I think sometimes it's going to actually, like the good teams are actually going to find it actually better for them.
The thing is, we just don't know because they haven't tested this properly.
Yeah.
You know, and we won't know until they bring it in and the coaches, you know, work out a way to negate it.
Some of the other ones that came in is when defenders mark or receive a free kick within 9 metres of their own goal, the man on the mark will be brought in line with the top of the goal square. So this is so they're not right up on the boundary, basically. That's to give them a bit more space. Runners and water carriers. Team runners may only enter the playing surface after a goal has been kicked and must exit before the play restarts. That doesn't give them much. That's basically killing off the runner in a major way, except to run out and give some very quick instruction.
This I don't really care about. The game could live without runners anyway.
See, I don't have a problem with the runners as well. And I think where clubs are arguing this is a problem is for the good teams and veteran teams, it's not a big deal because they know the rotations. They know they've got people out like, you know, Hodge was an example, you know, and Lewis at Melbourne, where they sort of coach on the field. But you're a you know, a Gold Coast Suns, you're a Carlton, young players, not much experience. Those coaches have said they'll miss the runner a lot more.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
And so I kind of look at it in a competition where we're trying to, the AFL's trying to even out and limit the blowouts and all this sort of stuff. This is a rule that the good teams will be like, great. And the bad teams will be like, this isn't too good for us. And I kind of go, well, what's the point of that rule? Yeah. And it seems they just don't like the clutter. Like, I know runners occasionally get in the way, but they actually don't get in the way that much.
Yeah, or they don't because...
I think it's a bit of an overreaction, you know.
Oh, yeah, a bit of an overreaction. And again, the water carriers, again, I'll just go back to the players interchange so often these days that they can get a drink or a message from the coach.
That's right.
If you can't get it right now, wait 5 minutes and get it then, you know.
But that's why I just read, well, why have runners at all? Like, you know, to run on after a goal and then back off before the play restarts. Yeah,
that's obviously just an aesthetic thing because they don't want to see the clutter.
Umpire contacts, players will be prohibited from setting up behind the umpire at centre bounces. This just makes sense to me because the umpire always motioned I'm running back that way. Yeah. So why did people used to just muck around with it to try and get in the way and lose their opponent?
I mean, if you watch most centre bounces, being behind the umpire is a bad place to line up anyway if you want to have the best opportunity of getting your hands on the ball.
Yeah, the only thing that it was ever used for is with one player wanting to try and lose his opponent by running quickly before the umpire went back.
Him off.
50-metre penalty. The player with the ball must be allowed to advance the mark by 50 metres without the infringing player delaying the game. So that's sort of holding them up, I guess, with some of them. And they'll be able to play on while the 50-metre penalty is being measured out.
Is that new?
Well, yeah, normally...
I guess it must be, or they would be telling us about it.
Normally you'd have to advance and then it would be play on. But now it just seems you can run up. So it means when everyone, like, tracks back no longer will. They all sort of ran back and then got in position, and then there'd be play on. Now they'll all have to act like, oh, this guy can play on at any second.
So they haven't addressed.
I don't know how often
protected zone.
I don't know how often you'd do that anyway, though. Like take the whole 50. I mean,
you take the 50
unless someone's so empty in the goal square or something.
And so often, a 50-metre penalty brings you within a shot at goal.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not going to be used that often.
Kicking for goal after the siren. A player's been awarded a mark or free kick once the player's ended. Will now be able to kick across their body using a snap or check side kick, but must kick the ball directly in line with the man on the mark and the goal. So you'll be able to basically start standing side on and then just kick it. You can't run around or anything. That's basically saying.
You still can't play on.
That's just addressing the fact that all the players have started doing check side kicks and stuff like that, crazy, and snaps more and more. Hand in the back rule interpretation has been repealed, so a player can now place your hands on the back of your opponent to protect your position, but you can't push your opponent in the back. So it's back to the old days of a push in the back, not hands in the back.
Yeah.
Which I like.
That makes sense. I mean, that again, I guess for the umpires, it makes it slightly a bit more difficult, because if you can put your hands there, then they then have to make the added decision. Did he push him, or is he just using his body weight?
See, I used to like the fact, like, it did seem to crack down on players who just use their body well. Like, the amount of times I'd see someone who was just really strong fend off another player, but then give up the free kick, and you'd be like, test the strength in a marking contest is like what part of the game is. So,
no doubt. I mean, that is one of the great things when you see, say, a forward take the position behind his backman, but just hold him out with his hands and then just pluck the ball out of the air. Yeah. So hopefully there's a bit more of that.
And prior opportunity for ruck contests, a ruckman who takes direct possession of the ball from a bounce throw up or boundary thrown will no longer be regarded as having had prior opportunity. Where there is uncertainty over who is the designated ruckman, the ruckman for each team will still be required to nominate to the field umpire. I don't understand that bit any different. So I guess that's fine. Like, that sort of means they can grab it now. So.
They can grab it and run off with it, which they sort of could always do as long as they weren't tackled.
So now,
Now, if you do grab it out of mid-air and take off with it.
It seems to me that it's less freed up the game, though, because now you can just grab it. If you get tackled straight away, well, it's not prior opportunity. Yeah. So it seems like that's not freeing up the game.
Yeah, I don't reckon it is.
Trade week, we've done trade week, so maybe we move on. You were mentioning to me, did you go? The wrestling was at the MCG.
I didn't go. No,
what did they have, about 70,000?
Nearly 71,000 people there.
I thought that was unders on what they were hoping. I thought they were sort of hoping for a sellout.
I thought it was strange the way the actual setup there. There was a lot of, it appeared to be unused space on the actual oval bit, and they put a lot of people in the stands around, which is up. I mean, they can set it up any way they like, but I always felt that, unless it's a bit like boxing, unless you're courtside, I'd rather watch it on telly. Yeah,
you want to be that close.
Yeah, but I've got to say that they did turn it into an event, and they got 70,000 people there.
But Melburnians will go to anything.
Yeah, well, true, but and it is an event. It's not a great. It's not. You couldn't call it one of the great sporting contests of the modern era.
Not since Melbourne were tanking era, where there's so many predetermined outcomes.
Exactly.
They've now got an M&M concert. Scheduled for there too. So the MCG is increasing. I can't wait till we can start blaming the poor turf quality on an M&M.
On M&M, yeah. There was one thing at the wrestling though. Quite a few people got a little upset that some of the wrestlers came onto the ground through the members without wearing a collar on their shirts.
One thing that was been interesting, we're getting into the spring carnival time of year, which
Caulfield Cup this week.
Caulfield Cup, and it's all happening. The Everest was run. It was kind of interesting watching. We all the stuff with the Opera House and all that. But
didn't that have Sydney written all over it? All that fuss,
Well, it had it in many ways. One, the people who were upset about it, and on the other side, the politicians capitulating to betting companies and Alan Jones and betting companies. So it sort of had everything Sydney involved in
it. It had. Protesters, as you say, coming out of the woodwork for something that's not that important. But then you had that it was so obvious that the whole town is still run by spivs, you know.
But don't you think what I find interesting about the Everest, so not so much take away the Sydney Opera House, like even if that hadn't happened, there's a lot of angst about the Everest, especially in Melbourne too.
Yeah.
You know, but to me, like, good on Sydney racing trying to actually create
nothing against
excitement.
the race.
I mean, because this is like, you know, Sydney are known for not doing events well often.
Yeah.
Like, they've done some really well, like, say, the Sydney Olympics, you know, so they can do it when they... But this is like a really good one where Melbourne does these things all the time. Now, the good thing about, I think, the Everest is it means the Melbourne racers, who have been dominant for so long, just have to lift their game a bit as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Much.
There was a bit you could tell in Melbourne of the... Oh, who do they think they are?
Yeah, and you're like, well, it's competition.
Yeah, fair enough.
You'll be fresher for the competition. It means you'll have to lift. It means, and you've already seen bits of that with increases in the Melbourne Cup prize money and things like that since it. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with the competition.
Yeah.
Melbourne's got all these great facilities for racing and all this, and it's a racing town in many ways. So, therefore, just lift your efforts.
I read somewhere a fairly, you know, high-ranking Melbourne racing kind of person said, isn't that just typical of Sydney? You got to pay $1 million just to get in the race. You know, it's only for the rich ones. I think, well, there ain't too many paupers running in the Melbourne Cup. Let me tell you.
Like, oh well, at least we've got battlers like Lloyd Williams in the Melbourne Cup,
and the sheiks, all the sheiks. You know.
Yeah, that's right. They do. There's still a fair few costs. So I actually thought, I think the Everest is actually doing a good job of, you know, the amount of media coverage in that too. I mean, they weren't upset with the Opera House staff.
It's there. It's there for good now. But even since they started last year, I haven't been convinced about the name, the Everest.
You don't like that?
Nah, it's just a bit. I can't think of a better one off the top of my head because I know they're obviously trying. It's the biggest and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
maybe like the real Everest, they should have the frozen corpses of failed jockeys all around Randwick, you know.
Or maybe a smaller mountain.
Yeah. A base camp.
Mount Lofty. Usain Bolt seems to have bolted. He came in, he kicked 2 goals in that game recently, which was not an A-League game. It was a trial match between a bit of a composite side from some of the lower.
But 2 goals in a soccer game, it doesn't really matter what level
now, where's
you're
he off to there?
Well, there's some talk that the first report I saw was AC Milan had dangled a contract in front of him. But I don't think it wasn't AC Milan. It's another European club. And
is he definitely off, or is this still a bit... Why would you pick AC Milan when you could play for the Central Coast Mariners?
Well, exactly. You know, the wilds of Italy, or...
How realistic would it be, though? Like,
or Gosford, you know?
That's right. Well, you'd think he kind of... In the A-League, you'd say he has... It's not a sure thing, but he's got a chance of actually probably playing. You go to AC Milan, you're there for the circus. Yeah. But the idea that you're going to ever play in their first team...
In their best 11, not a chance in hell.
Never, no matter...
And even this other, I can't remember the name of the club off the top of my head, but again, it's a European club, and he won't be playing in the first. Like all these European soccer clubs, it's not just the one team. They're like the American baseball teams.
Yeah.
Every team, like the LA Dodgers, they have all their feeder teams underneath, their seconds and thirds and fourths. And that's the best he could probably do. So if he is good enough for the A-League, and there's plenty of people who reckon he probably isn't just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, he may as well play in the ones down here.
Yeah, in one way, it's great if
and Gosford's got to be nicer living than Paris.
Well, he said he liked the laid-back sort of beach and everything of Australia more than some of the other countries. But when you think about it, like, for the A-League, that's twofold. Like, it could go either way. Like, having him around definitely massively increases the profile of their competition and the media coverage and all that. So there's benefits for them there. On the flip side, the fact he could come here and play, and if he does make it in and everything, says something about the standard of play in a while. So there's sort of this underlying thing, a bit of... I was worried about. It's like
you've got to say, is the A-League
that good?
It's not that good, is it?
Because the A-League is at a really interesting point. They seem to have sorted out all the FIFA governance issues, but it's about to restart, and you kind of look at it and go, it's been on the decline for a few years.
Yeah. They need a good year this year.
They need a good year. They need it to really, head home. And I looked at, we were talking about this before we got on air. I mean, you look at the NBL.
Yeah.
I watched the overtime. There was 4 overtimes.
Yeah, I watched that game there.
Melbourne United
Friday night.
and you kind of. But the NBL has definitely gone up a notch, and tickets to like Melbourne United down here are actually quite hard to get.
They're hard to get, and good seats are not cheap.
Yeah, and so you look at that, and you sort of, and now there's smaller stadiums and stuff to a lot of the A-League ones and all that sort of stuff. But you kind of look at that and go, the NBL is a summer sport. The BBL has gone over to 7 and going to get a lot of coverage. You sort of look at it and go, it's a tight market.
Yeah.
The summer, when the NBL, when soccer and the NSL and the NBL both, moved to summer to sort of not go against the two big, footy codes, you look at it and go, well, summer's not exactly easy anymore.
No, and then you've got...
And the BBL's wall to wall.
Yeah, and you've got, as you say, the cricket, there's Test cricket, there's Big Bash, you got...
And the NBA kicked off yesterday.
3 or 4 weeks of tennis in January.
Yeah, and the NBA. Like, I think the other thing that's changed from when we were younger is, I remember, I used to have an interest in the NBA and baseball and various things, but you couldn't watch it regularly, not easily.
No.
Now you can stream it all. Like if you pay like I've got NHL, NBA, NFL.
Yeah.
And baseball, I've paid for all the streaming of them all, plus I have Foxtel because I don't have a life. And you can watch them all real time.
Well, I'll tell you what, the basketball, it's always been big with the kids, but your young kids and your teenagers now here in Australia, I can tell you from first-hand experience, not only are they all over the NBA, they watch it all on their phones and their iPads, more so than the adults.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that, say it again, simply that the A-League needs a good year, needs a really, really good year.
Yeah.
And does it need Usain Bolt? And they'll have to make a decision on him fairly quickly, you'd have to think.
Yeah, unless he's off.
Unless he's taken off for the wilds of Europe.
All right, well, good to be back, and we'll be back to normal transmission now. So, thanks for listening, and let's turn our eye to the draft soon because there's no one who knows more about that than you and I.
We've got 4 or 5 weeks to make up stuff about the draft.
We will make up the best stuff.
Yeah.
See you later.